All I would really need to do to make this the new Air Force One Travis Scott Utopia is to create a little marking right here.
Believe it or not, this is my very first Air Force One, like in the OG, like the classic Air Force One model. Obviously, low tops. I don't know why people have a lot of hate for the mid tops. Not a huge fan of the high tops, but in your opinion, are Air Force Ones comfortable? Aw man, this is a travesty with having a 3-stripe Adidas track pants on a pair of Air Force Ones. It's crazy. These are my go-to sneakers. So you're probably wondering how we got here. It all started when I spent the second half of 2023 basically only wearing Air Forces. It wasn't intentional. I paid a pretty penny on the Hoka Bondi 8s that I showed y'all a couple months ago. But they just weren't doing it for me for reasons that I can get into in another video. It was a comfortable shoe until things just kind of changed. I spent, you know, over $200, mind you, on some brand new sneakers that you just get from this store called Fleet Feet. It was recommended to me by my neighbor who's a nurse. And one of the cool things about Fleet Feet is before they even let you try any shoe in their inventory, they do a 3D scanning of your feet using volumetric scanning technology. This is good for 3 main reasons. First, you can know the actual size of your feet, and believe it or not, sometimes one foot is bigger than the other, like yours truly. Then you could, secondly, know your ball width, your arch, your instep height, heel width, ball girth. What are we talking about? Basically, a lot of things about general measurements of your feet, and you can basically have that forever. Just to let y'all know, I swapped out the insoles that generally go with the Air Forces with some insoles that I got from Fleet Feet, which kind of goes into the second point here, which is that by knowing whether you have a high or low arch, you can actually know what kind of insoles to get, because I think generally speaking, a lot of insoles for shoes don't actually come with the necessary cushioning if you have a high arch or low arch. Believe it or not, whether you have a high arch or a low arch, you generally will need some type of support. Even if you have a low arch, you would need some type of support. So it's kind of nice to actually have your own custom fit insoles. But that brings me to the third point, which is that you can know all of these measurements of your feet relative to the general population of your gender. So I can know whether I have a high arch or low arch relative to the male population. Whether you have narrow feet, whether you have wide feet. I mean, for the longest time, I actually thought that I had wide feet. And so when I was younger, I would get the wide version of like dress shoes and sometimes sneakers when they were available. It turns out I actually have relatively narrow feet for the general male population. And that was something that I only found out through this 3D scanning of my feet. And it's completely free with Fleet Feet, and once you do it, you actually get to keep that information and keep that 3D presentation, if not forever, at least for a pretty long time. About this shoe, it didn't bottom out, not as quickly as the Hoka Bondi 8s. One thing that Air Forces are kind of notorious for, which is kind of why I'm even doing this sort of review of Air Forces after 6 months of consistent wear, is they kind of get beat up pretty easily. The biggest culprit, which is fixable by the way, is the toe box, especially on this left toe. I think one of the reasons for that is that, you know, I put less pressure, and you know, I'm much more careful with my right foot because of my toe. But for the left foot, it's really been through it. One thing you'll definitely know is that generally when it comes to special releases and special editions for Air Forces, one of the benefits of getting those, even if they end up looking almost identical to the regular general releases is that they tend to have better leather quality. The leather on this is jacked, and part of it is because the leather is pretty flimsy from jump. It's just kind of the trade-off. You're not getting prime quality leather when you're getting a pair of Air Force Ones, at least, you know, regular general releases. But that said, they're relatively inexpensive compared to other sneakers in the market. You can definitely see there is some wear in the mesh lining of the shoe. Third issue kind of has to do with the outsole. There are generally stars on the outsole of the Air Forces, and these shoes have been through so much that the outsole stars have basically disappeared. It's typical with extensive wear, but the grip and all that stuff still visible on the other parts of the shoe. But it's important to keep in mind that the more pressure you put on certain areas with your feet, the more that you're going to see the wear and tear. Using heel to toe pronation, heel to toe stepping as I'm walking, and it's on the right side of my heel. So that kind of shows how I'm walking and how I'm clearly applying much more pressure on the right side and on the back of my foot as opposed to the left side. But I have gotten a whole bunch of stuff to kind of help out for future Air Force One purchases. I do think that Air Forces are going to be my go-tos going forward. They just give me much more support than I actually ever expected. Air Forces are, if you haven't known, if you haven't heard, are notoriously viewed as bricks in the sneaker community. Not so much as not being good looking, but bricks as in terms of comfort. They're typically seen as like not uncomfortable, but not the most comfortable. Breaking into them can sometimes be just kind of a long, arduous process. But for me personally, I actually liked that because it kind of gave me a lot more support in the midsoles. The midsoles themselves are much thicker. Yeah, you're gonna see a lot more Air Force One content, if we're being honest. Be a force guy like Anakin. Another thing to kind of remember is that these laces, a lot of people say that after the laces get really dirty, it's over, it's game over. You're gonna need to swap them out for something new. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that Nike sells replacement laces. So you're gonna have to kind of figure out, you know, how to get replacements on your own. I mean, everybody is probably tried on a pair, had a pair, but this is my first time having like the OG Air Forces. Yeah, let me know what your life hacks are regarding Air Forces. I'd love to know them. It would help a lot. Help me grow this channel. Make sure to smash that subscribe button for the next time, and Merry Christmas.